7 seconds. That's how long it takes the average person to put you in a box when they meet you. So unless you control these 7 seconds consciously, you will end up in a box that's somewhat out of your control. There's one character trait that you can learn. When you have that trait, people will put you in better boxes in all aspects of life, but in particular in dating. And that character trait is charisma. Now, there's a very well-studied effect that scientists have dubbed the halo effect. And the halo effect essentially means that the more attractive you are physically, the more positive assumptions people are going to make about you. So if somebody is very good looking, people are going to assume that that person is successful, that that person is dating attractive people, etc., etc. Now, a very similar thing happens with charisma. If you are a very charismatic person, people will make a whole lot of assumptions just based on the charisma that they experience in the first couple seconds. So they will assume that you're very confident, that you've had great experiences with people in the past, that you're potentially a great leader, and all of that is just being assumed based on the fact that you're behaving in a very charismatic way of the start of the conversation. And the cool thing about this effect that I like to call the charisma halo is that you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to demonstrate anything. It's all implied based on the fact that you're charismatic. Just with the halo effect, where it's implied that you are at the top of the food chain just based on your looks. And it doesn't even have to be true. That is just the implication, the psychological effect that this has on most people. Now, what do we mean when we talk about charisma? When we have a public speaker, everybody has heard that term, right? A charismatic public speaker, that is somebody that can motivate and engage an entire crowd. When we talk about charisma in the dating context, we mean something similar but on a much smaller scale. Charismatic person in a dating context is somebody that can make you feel something. Because most people, when we speak in a very matter-of-fact way, where we basically share information with other people. Now, what you want to learn, what you want to be able and what you want to be getting better at is the ability to make other people feel something when they're around you. You want to give them an experience. You want to give them an emotional spike, so to speak, whether it's positive or negative. These are both aspects of the spectrum that you want to make people feel. But that is essentially what charisma is. Somebody who can make other people feel emotions through the power of his words. And you for sure experienced somebody like that in the past, maybe in your childhood. The guy that was at the dinner table or at some party who was just this insanely good storyteller where you just can't stop listening. You just want to hear the story. Even a story that you've heard before, you want to hear it again. You want to be part of that story one more time. That is a charismatic person in that small confined space of 2 or 3 people. Okay, why is charisma so powerful? It's so powerful because it's an honest signal. And an honest signal is a term that psychologists use to describe something that you signal that is very hard to fake. So other people perceive this honest signal, and because it's so hard to fake, they make all sorts of assumptions, because only people that fulfill these assumptions will typically have these character traits. So to use a charisma example here, only somebody who has had great experiences with people in the past and who's very confident is going to be charismatic. At least that is the assumption that we make. So when somebody is charismatic, we almost have to assume that that person is very confident, because it's so difficult to fake charisma. You can fake it, sure, for a minute, for 30 seconds, but faking it consistently is pretty hard. We're going to teach you what you can do to appear more charismatic and to over time actually become more charismatic, but it is very difficult to fake, and that is why it is so powerful in the psychological sense, where people will make all of these positive assumptions about you. Okay, so how do you actually become more charismatic? I'm going to share 3 things with you that you can start implementing right away. If you implement them, they will pretty much instantly make you more charismatic. The first one is to focus on being expressive, but the danger here is that you become performative. So what is expressiveness and what is the difference to being performative? So expressiveness, that's a term that's being thrown around a whole lot on YouTube. And what it essentially means is being more engaging with how you talk. So using your tonality, going up and down, varying the speed at which you talk, varying the pitch at which you talk, sometimes speaking a bit deeper, sometimes speaking a bit lighter, sometimes speaking a bit faster, or maybe a little bit slower, right? You can play with your voice, speaking louder, or just speaking a little more quietly. You can use your voice as a tool, but you can also use your hands, you can use your eye contact, you can use your smile, you can even break eye contact, turn away. These are all things that engage people. That is what makes you expressive. Communicating with your whole body rather than just communicating by sharing information. That is the difference between somebody who is expressive and somebody who's not expressive. Now, the danger with being expressive is that you become performative, where it doesn't really feel natural anymore and everybody sees that you're playing a role. However, it is fairly difficult to actually come across as performative because people will always just assume that is who you are and that you're just a very charismatic, very expressive, very confident person. And that's all positive assumptions that we want people to make about us. So I wouldn't worry about the performative aspect too much. It is a slight risk that people often worry about. Well, will I not seem fake? Will I not seem like, oh, I'm performing or I'm playing a role? But I really wouldn't worry about that too much in the beginning. Worst case, you can always dial it back. But first you have to push. You have to go from where you are now to being more charismatic, pushing yourself a bit more, and then you can calibrate it back a bit and become a bit more dialed in, so to speak. So be more expressive. The second thing, and that sound like a little bit of a contradiction, is using pauses. The better you get at actively pausing during your speeches and using silence for tension, the more charismatic people will perceive you, because most people just cannot do it. Most people cannot stand silence in a conversation, especially amongst two people. Start using silences. Start using these breaks consciously. Play with them. Use the silence and think about, oh, well, it's not the pressure on me, but I'm actually putting the pressure on the other person. Look at the other person, smile, and just think to yourself, let's see what they're going to do. Let's see when they continue the interaction. It's on them. And if they don't do it, you can always go back. You can continue, right? And also, when you're talking, during your talks, during your speeches, during your interactions, during your dialogue, your storytelling, or your interactions, what you want to do is you want to actively pause in your sentences. Use pauses to make a point. Use pauses to reinforce points. See, I'm trying to simulate this a little bit here to give you a feeling of what you can do with the pauses. And the last point I'm going to share in today's video is how you carry yourself. And I want to share a story here. When I started studying law in Germany, there was a professor that came in on my first day in university. He was a criminal law professor who's now a high-ranking judge in Germany. And I remember him walking in and everybody immediately knew that he was the guy who was going to do the lecture just because of how he carried himself. This guy was probably the most charismatic professor I had, and you could feel that off of him the moment he entered the room. Basically, everybody turned their heads. It's really this guy opens the door, walks in, and everybody looks at him because of how he carries himself. 100% certainty, 100% determination, 0% doubt, just trusting in his ability to do what he came to do, trusting in his performative skill set, so to speak, trusting in his expressiveness, knowing that what he's going to do, what he's going to share is going to be interesting. And you can use this concept again in dating. The better you get at being confident, acting confident, having a plan of what you want to do, of who you are, knowing yourself, knowing how to have a good interaction, knowing how to make people laugh. All of these skill sets, the better you get at them, the more people will perceive you as that charismatic dude that just knows who he is, and they will want to be around you. They will want to be part of that experience that it is to be around you and feel your energy. So before I get lost in the sauce here, I love this part. This is basically the ultimate goal of becoming and embodying charisma. That said, if you want help with that, there's a link to my calendar down below. Let's hop on a call. Let's have a chat. Let's see how we can help you progress on your journey. And otherwise, see you in the next video.